Welcome back, guys. It's craft time. In today's video, we are going to be making some vendor booth smalls. Smalls just mean exactly that, just smaller items at smaller prices. That way you can fill in the gaps, and they really are great fillers for your booth. And for me, I really like having a lower price range up to my higher end stuff, just so that everyone has the ability to shop at my booth. So most of these are going to be spring/Easter related. However, I do have these two little ceramic animals that have been chilling on my shelf that I need to get finished up and put in my booth. So I'm going to take these, and I believe they either came from Dollar Tree or Target Dollar Spot. I genuinely can't remember, but I'm just going to wipe them down with some alcohol, clean up any of the sticker residue, and then we're going to move forward with giving them a makeover. I'm going to start that makeover by taking the Rust-Oleum 2X in clear matte and giving them an even coat all over top and bottom. That way my rub and buff will stick. And with rub and buff, if it's a nice slick and smooth surface, it does have a really hard time sticking or adhering to that surface, so that clear spray paint is just going to give it a nice clear substance to kind of grip to. That way you can just rub it on as you see me doing here. Rub and Buff is beautiful metallics and it's like a wax that you just rub on, and I am in love with this antique gold, and I've been using it quite a bit. And all you're going to do is make sure you're wearing gloves, make sure you're in a ventilated area. Like, I'm just working in my craft room with the window cracked because it does have a very strong scent. And you're just going to rub it all over. You don't have to apply a ton of pressure. And so I just did that for both pieces, and then I did do a second coat. On the second coat, I did not apply very much pressure at all, just to make sure that bottom coat didn't scoot around on me. However, if you are having that issue, you can just give it another spritz of that clear coat. At this point, why would I just not spray paint it? Well, it's just easier just to wear these Rub and Buff little packets. I love this one. Let me know how you think it turned out. For the next one, I'm going to be taking the Dollar Tree little carrots here and some of the Dollar Tree little bunny mini cutouts, and working together to make little shelf sitters or tiered tray sitters. I'm going to start by removing those cute little bunny butts, setting them aside because I am going to put them back on, but I wanted to take them off so that I could stain both sides with this Waverly antiquing wax. Mine is already semi-watered down, and I do that just so I can control the tint and make sure it doesn't get too dark, because I can always add more, but I can't always take it off. So I'm just going to paint it on and then wipe it back off. And I'm going to do that for both bunnies, and I'm going to do that for both sides, because you will be able to see both sides on this little creation that we're making here today. So I'm just going to do that, wipe it back off, and then go on and do the other side. From there, we're going to start in on these carrots. Now, what I want to do is make them in bundles of 3 to where they can semi-self-stand. They can't really self-stand on their own, but just to where all 3 of the points at the bottom meet the ground flushly. That way I can have the ability to have them stand when I add that bunny back on. So I'm just going to take a little hot glue, only go halfway down, just connecting the tops to where they are more straight than tapered in. And I'm just going to glue the 3 of those together. I did kind of do too much glue on that first set, so I'm just going to pull it slightly apart to where those tips go more straight down rather than angled in. And then I'm going to grab some scissors. I'm using my Cricut scissors because they're nice and sharp, and I'm just going to cut vertical strips to break up that chunkiness in that top little, I don't know if it's like raffia or what, just to kind of let that be more, I don't know, wild and free rather than clumpy, because I think it just looks a little more natural and honestly a little more high-end, like it has more pieces and texture to it. So you can see the difference here. So I'm just going to again do that again. As long as you're going vertical along with that and not horizontal, you shouldn't lose too much of it. You see a little bit here, but it's not really falling out or anything. It's just I'm cutting a little bit of those pieces off. So I'm just going to keep doing that, and then again use my fingers to spread it out just to make it look a little more substantial. I wanted to add a little bit of twine to these carrot bundles just to add you know, another little accessory, make it a little bit more visually pleasing. It's not doing anything as far as actually holding the bundles together, but I do think it looks super cute. So I'm just going to take a thin jute twine here, wrap it around twice, and then tie it on. So what I like to do is make my first tie, put a tiny bit of hot glue that you're not going to actually see, and then make that second tie and cinch it down. And then when it cinches down, it's going to hold that in place. That way I don't have to worry about it coming untied or that twine slipping around. Here you see me kind of playing with the idea. I hadn't fully come across what I wanted to do here yet, so I'm just kind of learning as I go on how exactly I want it to look. Now I do want this to be self-standing, and it's not going to do that on its own, so I'm using some of these little wood cubes from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to use that same antiquing wax, paint them up, wipe them down, and then glue them to the back of the bunny. That way it will all stand on its own. So what I'm going to do here is kind of line it up, set them both down on the ground to where it's flush. That way I know it will self-stand. And then I'm going to hot glue it on a little off-centered. That way it will fit up next to the carrots the way I need to. So I'm just going to let that dry, and then see here I'm seeing where the carrots are going to touch the bunny so that I know where to place my glue. I'm just going to add a little bit of glue so there's not a ton of overflow, squeeze it right in there to where it needs to go, apply a little pressure, and let it dry. And then as you can see, it can stand on its own, and I think it's super, super cute. And then I'm just going to repeat that same process again, using one of those little cubes to help it self-stand. We want to hit it with some of that antiquing wax so that it all looks cohesive and goes together. So I'm going to do that, let it dry, and then I'm going to, while that's drying, go ahead and put that second jute twine around my carrots. That way they have the same kind of similar vibe. However, I am going to tie it opposite of the other one. So where the other one I made my tie on the left, this one I'm going to make my tie on the right, and I'm going to switch the bunny orientation around. That way, if one person wants to buy both of them, they have both orientations, so they can set it in different spots. But two, just give a little variation if someone might like one side better than the other, depending on where they're going to put it. It'll also make staging it look a little better for me. So you see here I added that little bit of glue, I cut it down, trim it down, and then I'm going to glue on my cube. It's important again to set them both down on the desk to make sure that the bottoms meet up flush. Let it dry, and then hold it up to see where it's going to meet the carrots so you know where to add your glue. And simple as that, you're going to just add your glue, squeeze them together to make sure there's good adhesion, and you're done. I think they turned out super cute. Again, you can let me know what you think about them in the comments below. This next one, I have several things that I'm going to be piecing together here. I have this little self-standing house that I picked up from the Dollar Tree, as well as this little arch, which I know I've seen ones like this at the Dollar Tree. It could have come from Dollar General. I'm not positive because I did get it in a package for Christmas of art. I got a big package of art stuff, and I'm going to be using that to make one cohesive piece here, along with another one of those little bunnies. I'm going to be using the Waverly chalk paint in the color ink. It's just black, and I'm going to paint this up with kind of a messy first coat, and then I'm also going to be hitting that roof with this coat as well, just so that the blacks are the same tone, and then I'm going to come back and do a second. After I hit that second coat, I did go ahead and touch the roof on the top and paint the entire back of the piece just to make sure it all looks cohesive. I'm going to take that bunny tail off. I'm going to paint it down with this Waverly wax that's been watered down again, wipe it off, and set it aside. I'm only painting one side because it's not going to be seen from the other side, so I'm not worried about it in this project. And then here you do see me hitting it all with paint because I like my backs to look as pretty as my fronts, just in case, this is going to be sitting on a table and you're going to be able to see it from both sides. And that's just important to me, that it all looks really nice and cohesive. And if this is for your own personal decor, then I think it's fine if you don't feel like taking this step. But I do sell all of my products in my booth, so I just want to make sure that it's a good representation of myself and my work, and by making sure that not only the front but also the backs are nice and finished makes me happy and reflects good on myself. Here you see me kind of wet distressing that window back. I'm doing really like a heavy distress on it and more of like a faded look. I don't want just a harsh distress, but I do want to give this a little bit more dimension and giving it that little bit of weathered look. So I'm just going to rub around on this until I'm happy with the distressing that it's giving me, and then I'm going to set it aside and I'm going to make the roof match. Now I'm going to do it a little differently because obviously underneath that is more black. So I'm just going to take some of my white Waverly chalk paint and I'm going to put a very tiny bit on my finger and I'm going to rub that on the roof in the places that I want it to go. And I'm just going to do it really lightly because you could always add more, but it's harder to take it back. However, to make it less harsh, or if you do get too heavy-handed, you're just going to take the black that you use, which in this case is my the color ink, and you're just going to paint back over it with a little bit of that black and smear the two colors together. And what that's doing is giving me that same kind of look that I did get with the window, so that they both look like they were always meant and were always one piece. Now it's time to move on to assembling. It came with this cute little greenery wreath and I'm going to keep it. I'm just going to grab some floral wire so that I can add it back onto the little arch piece really easily and get it kind of set where I want it to be. So I'm going to start up here in the corner and I'm literally just going to wrap that wire around and cinch it down. And then I'm going to cut off any of the excess because I don't want any bulk behind this when I glue it down. So I'm just going to line it up, make sure it's sitting where I want it to, that the wreath is at the right orientation, and then I'm going to go ahead and cinch it down around the opposite corner, basically down at the bottom, to make sure it stays in place and it's not wiggly or wobbly. Now here I'm going to go back to full, like regular timing and mode because I'm going to show you how great this STARBOND glue is. I am not sponsored by them at all. I am just obsessed with how great this product works. You literally just put the glue on one side and it's a super glue, and it has an accelerator that you spray on the opposite side, and when the two meet it adheres immediately. And again, this is all in real time and it's amazing. So I don't have to do a little bit of super glue with some hot glue to make everything set so that I can keep moving forward. With this, I just put the glue on, I spray the other side, I put them down. You do have to be precise because they stick immediately, you'll see here. And it has just been so great because it's a permanent hold and I don't lose any time waiting for glue to dry. So I do have this linked in my Amazon links. They are affiliate links, so I do get a little bit back if you do purchase from there, but I'm telling you, this is not a gimmick, guys. This is true real life. It's time saver, and I am obsessed and I've been using this glue like crazy. So I will get off my soapbox and move forward. We're just going to reattach the cute little bunny tail now that we are ready, and we're going to add our bunny to the front of this wreath. I'm going to just kind of play around here, see where I want it to go, and then just use some hot glue and glue that down. This is meant for an indoor piece, so hot glue is also just fine here. I just wanted to make sure that that window arch was nice and flat to the piece of the house with no gaps or anything, so that's why I used the other glue. Now here I wanted to add this bow back on, and I just can't quite figure out where I want it to go. I don't want to cover up the wreath or bunny because I want that to be the show piece here. I want that to be the focal point. So I'm just going to cut off the tails here and see if it will fit anywhere else. So I'm just going to play around with positioning, and it just doesn't quite seem right. Something seems off. So I'm thinking to put it up here by the chimney, and I'm still feeling a little bit like it's not in place. So I went ahead and cut the tails, and that's when I realized it's a double bow, and that's exactly what it needed. I love it. Immediately I was like, yes, that's what it was missing. It just needed to be more substantial. So I pulled those out and glued it into place, and I think this piece is super cute. Again, let me know so far which one is your favorite down in the comments. This next one is just this little gift tag decor piece that I picked up from the the Target dollar spot. I apologize, I'm struggling this morning. And I have a scratch in my voice from some like allergy and sinus drainage, so I'm sorry. I'm doing my best here. But we're just going to remove the hanger because we want to keep that as is. It just unties and pulls out. And then I'm going to sand down all of the wording on the front to make sure it's a nice smooth surface to work with. A really easy way to wipe and clean it up is just to use a baby wipe, and then I can just wipe away all of the dust that we just made without creating more dust. So I'm going to do 2 different colors here. On one side, I'm going to use the color Sage. This is a chalk paint from Folk Art, I think. I believe so. And I'm just going to paint that on a really nice even coat, and then I'm going to let it dry. And by let it dry, I mean I'm just going to blast it with my little heat gun that I have here to speed up the process because no one has time to wait for paint to dry. I'm going to put on a second coat to make sure everything is nice and even and solid here. And then I'm going to let it dry and flip it over and paint the other side just a solid white, again just using some white chalk paint, and let that dry as well. And again, by let it dry, I mean blast it with the heat gun because what else are we doing? And then once that's ready, we're going to be using this really cute decoupage, like birdie musical paper. I did get this from Amazon. You can find this in my links in my description. And we're going to choose which birds we want for either side. And you see me flipping it here. I'm just lining them up and looking at them to see which one I want on which side, to kind of see which one goes better with which colors. So after I get that decided, I'm going to be using the dishwasher safe Mod Podge just in case someone decides to use this tag around a plant and it accidentally gets wet. I want to make sure it holds up for them. So I'm just going to paint that on nice and evenly. I did add a slight bit of water to this Mod Podge to make sure that it's a really smooth application and it's a little easier to adhere. And then you're going to lay your paper down on top, starting from one side working to the other. That way you can work out any possible air bubbles. And then I'm going to paint another thin layer on top, making sure everything is evenly coated. And then I'm going to, again, use my heat gun to help this dry. Excuse me. I like to get a little close, but then I kind of back off. That way I don't like overheat the Mod Podge or anything, because that is possible. And once it's nice and dry, I'm using my sanding block just to do a downward kind of diagonal motion on this paper, and it just frays right off perfectly to the shape that you need it to without any extra work. So we're just going to do that and have this nice, beautiful tag when we're done. To re-add that hole, I'm going to use this little screwdriver. You can use a little pen, a pencil, whatever you have, and poke that through. That way we can still restring it once we're done. Once the other side's nice and dry and good to go, we're going to start in on the other side using that same process. You're just going to paint on your Mod Podge and then adhere your paper. Now if you're having issues with bubbles, you can use saran wrap or like a Ziploc bag with a nice plastic surface. You're going to lay your paper down, then lay that on top, and then you can use your hand to really push out any of those bubbles. If you do it like I'm doing here, and you have too much Mod Podge underneath, it can stick to your fingers and rip and move. So just be very careful when you're doing that. I also have seen people do that first process, and instead of painting down like I'm doing here, they add some parchment paper on top and then they heat press it down, which I haven't tried yet, so maybe I'll check that technique out here soon. But good old-fashioned just decoupaging works for me at this point, so that's what I'm doing here. Again, once it's dry, I'm going to sand down all of those edges to give me those nice clean edges, and then I'm going to re-poke that hole. I am a little sad that on the other side it did go through the birdie's eye. I had kind of planned it out to miss that, but once you place it, it is kind of just where it is, and unfortunately that's where it landed. So it kind of is a little creepier on that side than I planned, but that's how it goes. I'm just going to restring this here, and to get the beads back on, I'm twisting the top of that rope, the 2 pieces together, and you can see I'm just twisting them really tight, and then when I put the bead on, as I'm pushing it down, I'm twisting it in that same direction so that it doesn't fray out on me. But if you're having issues with that, you can add a piece of tape to the top there, that way it threads easier. And then you're just going to tie it back and you have a nice beautiful little tag for decorations. And this one, I'm going to be using this cute little tin pail that I have. Honestly, don't know where it came from. But you could also use a cute little terracotta pot, whatever you're wanting to go for here. I'm going to stick with this pail. I just think it's super cute. I had picked up this little bird's nest and bird from Michael's during their 40% off spring decor. So I'm going to be using those to make a little like a nest in a bush situation. And to do that, we're going to start with some foam floral. I'm just indenting it here so I can see where it needs to go. And one of the easiest ways to cut floral is to use floral wire. It cuts through with virtually no mess, which if you've used foam floral blocks before, you know that they leave all of that like dust everywhere and it's super grimy and annoying. So the the floral wire really cuts down on that. I'm going to push it down in there. I'm going to cut my nest down to the size it needs, and then I'm going to use some hot glue to attach some Spanish moss to cover up that foam and to cover up those gaps in the sides. That way it looks nice and pretty and finished. And then I'm able to start assembling. I want to put my nest in first, as that's going to be the biggest focal piece, and I'm going to kind of do it at a slight angle because I do want you to be able to see it from the front when it's up on a shelf or wherever it's going to be displayed. So I'm just going to stick that down in there where I want, kind of playing around with my bird to get an idea of how it's going to sit. And then I'm going to be using some of these eucalyptus stems that I picked up from Walmart to fill it in to make that bush scene. I'm just going to cut them down to individual stems and stick them in all around just to what looks good to my eye. You can do more or less. You could do all these different heights. Like again, this is your piece, so if you're going to remake this, then that's what you can do. And I'm just going to fill in the gaps to make sure it looks nice and full. And then we're going to play around with our bird placement. I'm going to see here, I'm just going to kind of move things around, bend them into shape to where I think they look best. And then I'm going to kind of play around with where the bird should sit. I don't want to just glue it down without kind of eyeballing it and seeing what would be best for the piece. I am removing that metal clip so I can get a nice good adhere with my hot glue. And once I figured out what spot, I'm just going to hot glue it into place. This is nice, quick, and simple, but oh so adorable. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. That's it for this video, guys. I'm going to take you in for a closer look. Please hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed this video or plan to give any of these a try. I really appreciate you being here. Consider subscribing, and I will see you next time.